want Detroit sports talk done right? Yeah! If you want it, you got it. It's Detroit sports talk with attitude. It's the Knee Jerks with Eno and Big Al.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like at this time to introduce to you one of the finest running backs in the United States of America, and our number one pick, Barry Sanders.
Here's Isaiah. Let's see what we got. All the way up. Go!
We might not be in your car or on your transistor radio, but we're bringing you the best of Detroit sports past, present, and future. It's time for the Knee Jerks with two guys who know Detroit sports. Here's Greg Eno and Al Beaton.
It's Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. It's the last Knee Jerks podcast of the winter. But we're going to come hot and heavy with our hot takes. So, in other words, that's my convoluted introduction to the Knee Jerks, Detroit sports talk of Eno and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based broadcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things, and that would be Greg Eno of the Out of Bounds blog and the Rolodex. If you know what a Rolodex is, the size of an encyclopedia. Greg, what's up?
Not to be confused with the Rolex. I don't have one of those.
I would prefer a Rolex than a Rolodex, but that's a whole other discussion.
It is, and I thought you were going to break some news when you said the last Knee Jerks of. I'm like, is there something I should know about this?
Then I got those last couple words in, yes. Yeah.
I am Greg Eno from WordPress Out of Bounds blog. Thanks for checking that out. I hope you do every week, usually Monday or Tuesday. The latest piece today is about Chris Ilitch, and so check that out. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks, and you can also hit me up on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn too. I'm there. We have a bunch of stuff today. There's some breaking news in the NFL. We're going to talk about that. Of course, we're always going to be talking about, I guess, the MLB situation until it gets resolved. We got that. We got some Red Wings stuff to talk about. Some Pistons, red hot Pistons to talk about. But before we get to any of it, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get some eggs and you moan and groan and woe, don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if Al can correctly guess this person within the first two clues, he'll receive a fat head of me for his wall.
Boy, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, aren't we? I'm thinking a fat head. Where's he going with this one? And like I said, that's displayed on my wall, just staring at me 24/7. I'd be seeing you in my nightmares.
I don't know if they make fat heads. I don't know if they make fat heads anymore. I don't. I used to see commercials for them all the time. I don't know. They used to be. I think they used to be in bed with Rock Financial or Dan Gilbert owned both of them or something at one point. I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that old Simpsons bit where Homer builds this scary clown bed that terrifies Bart. And Bart's in bed rocking, can't sleep, clown's going to kill me. This would be can't sleep, Greg's going to kill me. So. All right, fire away.
Okay, this person made his name in the world of baseball. He was born on this date in 1942. Mm-hmm. Sadly passed away in December of 2020. A lot of folks think he should be in the Hall of Fame. He's not, but there's a lot of folks who think he should be. Made most of his hay in the National League, although he was a Windy City player he was in the Windy City for 3 years where he made a lot of hay as well, but predominantly a National League guy. And again, most people think maybe not most people, but lots of people think he's Hall of Fame worthy. And he was an infielder.
All right. Obviously played in the 60s. And 70s, obviously. Yeah, he said, how long in the Windy City?
Just 3 seasons.
3 seasons in the Windy City. He said he's mostly known as an infielder.
But I would say I'm leading you astray a little bit.
Yeah.
Those 3 years he spent in the Windy City were in the American League.
In the American League, okay. So he was a goddamn White Sox for 3 seasons. Okay.
He was.
Huh. Yeah. So
7-time All-Star. 7-time All-Star.
7-time All-Star. Hall of Fame. Could be considered in the Hall of Fame at the very least.
Yeah. Right.
Boy, it sounds like you're kind of dancing around here. You don't want to get too specific.
Exactly. Right.
And he said he passed away a couple years ago.
Yeah.
About a year and a half ago. Let's see. So, Minnie Minoso.
No, that was a little bit.
A little before, yeah, I think he's a little. Yeah, it might be a little too old. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was more 50s and 60s, wasn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Although he kept coming back.
Yeah, exactly. He's been playing like 5 decades because the Sox would bring him back once a decade or so in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
All right. With that, we will. I guess I'll wait till the next question. Maybe Greg will be a little more giving in his clues rather than dancing around the subject. But until we get to that point, let's talk a little sports, Greg. I guess we'll start with the NFL because that has made the most news as of late between the Combine, which I didn't watch any of. I just find people watching college kids do football drills to be boring as hell. I ran a bunch of football drills when I was in high school. I was bored with it then. I don't want to watch it now. And plus, you get all the numbers anyway. It gets posted immediately online if you're curious as to what some of these guys are doing. But there's been some juggling as to who's going to go where in the draft, but that's still, it's all speculation at this point. But the big news as of late has been the QB carousel because obviously a lot of people are saying there's not a surefire franchise quarterback in this draft. QB-needy teams are making moves. And we had 2 today, as a matter of fact, and both of them were quite, I would say, jaw-dropping for different reasons. First was Aaron Rodgers, the Packers' longtime quarterback, 2-time MVP, reigning MVP. And there was a lot of talk over the past couple of years that he was fed up with Green Bay, wanted to move on. He threatened to retire. He said he was going to be the host of Jeopardy. He's a big star who also is anti-vax, and that's a whole other subject, how we alienated quite a bit of the fan base. Regardless of all that, the Packers probably don't think they have their next franchise quarterback in Jordan Love, so they signed Aaron Rodgers, reportedly signed, because Rodgers has said he's going to play in Green Bay but has not confirmed a contract. But the word is, from the guys who are supposed to know, it's a 4-year, $200 million deal, $153 million guaranteed. That makes him obviously the highest paid quarterback, highest paid player in the NFL. That $50 million per year average will make Rodgers $5 million more than the next highest paid quarterback, who was the Chiefs' Patrick Mahomes. I guess we'll start with that first, Greg. Were you surprised that Aaron Rodgers is going to stay in Green Bay? Because he has seemed to be unhappier than hell over the past few years. Then again, I guess money talks, and maybe he doesn't see a better situation that could get him to a Super Bowl anyplace else right now. And as we'll talk a little bit about the big trade that happened today as well, and the package it took to get Russell Wilson traded, I don't know if you'd want to give that for a guy who's going to be 42 at the end of his contract. But I guess I'm surprised, but not surprised. I put it that way because Rodgers, Greg, has been vocal about his unhappiness with Green Bay, but all of a sudden he signs a 4-year deal.
Yeah, this doesn't surprise me in the least. This guy, I think I made him my jerk of the week last time we were together because I was just getting tired of
You mean
his
the Carlos Monterez Memorial Award, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, all this does is just show that a lot of that stuff was just a bunch of bluster. Money talks.
Yeah, especially in the NFL.
What I don't get though, Al, is and I hinted at this when I was doing my jerk of the week things. What I don't get is the Packers' fascination with this guy. Now I understand, starting quarterbacks, top flight quarterbacks just don't grow on trees. I understand. But when you look at Rodgers' career, and he's going to the Hall of Fame, there's no question. Yeah. I get it. He's going to the Hall of Fame. But you look at his career, and again, he's won 1 Super Bowl, and that was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole lot of first-round playoff exits in that on his resume, not the least of which, of course, was when I say first round, their first game, the Packers' first game. And that happened again this year, where they lost at home, where you're supposed to never lose at Lambeau in January. They lost at home to the 49ers. No, you can't. Obviously, you can't put all that blame on Rodgers' front step, but he is the quarterback and he's the guy. I don't know if I know it's easy for me to say because I'm not there. It's not my team to run, but I don't know if he wanted out. I guess what I'm saying is if he wanted out that badly. I think you said that he was unhappy. And, we'll see how unhappy he was, but then I would consider moving him or just just parting ways. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know that's easier said than done because who's going to be the next quarterback of the Packers, and you could go into a scenario where you're now wandering around for the next 5 or 6 years trying to find your next number one guy. That's a valid concern. But again, I don't know what this guy has done. I really don't. I mean, I know he's going to the Hall of Fame. There's no question. He's a Hall of Fame guy. I'm not going to besmirch him that at all. But the bottom line is the Packers have not done really anything. They've made a couple of NFC Championship games along the way since they won the Super Bowl. But they haven't gone back, and they haven't really – I mean, I don't know. At this age, at his age right now, I don't know where they think that – I guess they think that he's still the best. They're hitching their wagon to him. They still feel like he gives them their best chance of winning another Super Bowl. He could defy everything. He could go out there at the age of 40, for example, in a couple of years and win the whole thing. I mean, that could happen, sure. But at the same time, if you look at his career trajectory, it's almost like he's plateaued. I mean, he'll put up a lot of great numbers in the regular season. The Packers may indeed dominate the NFC North, ad nauseum. Sure, win the division, get a first round bye, play a game at Lambeau in January and lose. I don't know what I don't know where. Again, I'm not there. I don't know what the fan base in Green Bay, what kind of regard they hold him in. You mentioned the vaccine thing, but you got to understand that's Wisconsin, which is typically that where they are located, where Green Bay is located. And there's a lot of nut jobs politically. Oh yeah,
it's a lot like Michigan, where all the urban places are more pro-vax than the rural.
Right. It's like Green Bay is just. It's like mid-Michigan, mid-North, mid-Upper Peninsula, mid-Lower Peninsula Michigan, or Upper Peninsula Michigan for that matter.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that the vaccine thing really hurts him there. Now, it may hurt him nationally, because most of the people don't hold those views. I don't think it hurts him in Green Bay, so I don't think that would have any sort of, would turn any Packers fans against him.
Yeah.
So throw that out the window. I'm just looking strictly from a football standpoint. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to move on from those kind of guys, and it's not like his performance necessarily has gone down. But if the idea is to win championships, and the Packers haven't really, come all that close in the 11 years since they last won it. And I'm not sure what the fascination is with keeping this guy around and past the age of 40.
I would put it this way: I think the Packers are going all in, and for a few reasons. One, I think they may realize Jordan Love is not going to keep their streak of drafting Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Franchise quarterbacks for one. So they probably think Jordan Love is not the solution. Two, they're in a division that's for the taking. It's been theirs for the taking for a few years. The Lions are bad. The Vikings are mediocre, and the Bears are bad to mediocre. And they all have QB issues for the most part. The Bears have they'll have a rookie. They'll have a young guy in Fields, and we don't know who they're going to be. The Vikings have Kirk Cousins, and he's essentially the Dollar Tree version of Matt Stafford. And the Lions are the Lions with a bridge quarterback right now. So the division is there for the taking for the next couple years. By backloading this contract, which is obviously what they're going to be doing, they're able to keep the band together, so to speak, so they can make a run. And as you said, the point is to win championships, but to win championships, you got to get to the playoffs. Right now, the division is there for the taking for the Packers. They are, with Rodgers, they are still the cream of the division, and they're going to make the playoffs. More than likely as a division winner, or look at their teams they're playing in the division. They're going to win the majority of those games. They're going to make the playoffs. And then what happens in the playoffs? Well, what happens? It happens. It's let the cards fall where they may, but you can't win a championship until you get the playoffs. I think that's what the Packers are thinking. Mm-hmm. They're going all in. There's no quarterback in the draft this year I think that they feel that could get them to where they need to go. They have one. They have a Hall of Fame level quarterback who obviously has his warts, but he will still get you to the playoffs. And we've seen it a few times in the relatively recent past where 40-something-year-old quarterbacks or aging quarterbacks have taken teams to Super Bowls and won. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, John Elway, for example. Yep. It was literally at the ends of their career, and they were able to limp their way to a Super Bowl. So so there's still there's obviously still gas in Rodgers' tank. The wild card is, Rodgers is a bit of a flake, or we've seen he is a lot of a flake at this point, and he tends to be a very polarizing figure, which we don't know what's going on in the locker room because, as we said, the last couple of years he's been very vocal about how unhappy he was about how the Packers are being run, but he elected to stay. So I think that is why the Packers decided to do this. Is the quarterback market sucks, as we'll get into what Russell Wilson got in trade with Seattle, and the fact that they want to keep that competition playoff window open for 2-3 more years, and Rodgers at the very least I think can do that.
No, those are all valid points, and so I guess I'm kind of on the same in the same mindset as you are, that surprised and not surprised. But mostly I'm not surprised that he came back, because I really did all this bluster that he was showing, about this supposed unhappiness.
Oh, the retirement talk especially. Oh.
The rancor, right. The rancor, I always kind of take that with a grain of salt, because so many times, Al, players will do that. Mm. And all it takes is throw a few more bucks at them, and all of a sudden they become happy again. So it's not. I feel a lot less jaded about this if guys would more often exhibit their unhappiness and then follow through on it, and indeed leave, and indeed say, forget it, I'm cutting ties. And occasionally it happens where an athlete will say, I'm done, and they're done, and they truly are, and they go somewhere else, and so at least they're following through on their unhappiness. Yeah. But when a guy, saber rattles like Rodgers does, it to me, throughout the whole time, I never imagined that he would actually, actively seek a trade. Even though like we have seen it before with Brady leaving, with Stafford leaving, and so forth, that it kind of is. That's the new thing now, is you like in the NBA, where you just kind of plot out your exit strategy and you get yourself traded to a contender. But the Packers are a contender. Yeah. And he's not playing with chopped liver there. They're going to bring Adams back as his fancy schmancy receiver. They're keeping the band together. Just like Gronkowski went over to Tampa with Brady, and so there's really no incentive. Unless, again, they were going to trade Rodgers to a team that was Super Bowl ready. But how many teams like that are there? Now, you could say that even an average team, if you were to add Rodgers to it, could be Super Bowl capable. Yeah, that's true. But I guess I just kind of back what you said about the Packers looking at it as we're going all in. I guess Rodgers is doing the same thing. So his best.
That's last chance.
Right. His best chance at getting one more ring is to stay where he's at. And frankly, that's probably a good move. Yeah. Because, moves to other franchises, although it did pan out for Brady and it did pan out for Stafford, don't always do that. And, Peyton Manning, yes, there are examples of players who have late in their careers gone on and switch jerseys and all of a sudden, and it works out. That's true. But there are a lot of times where it doesn't. And but I think that this is just a case, Al, of both sides realizing that they're better with each other.
Yeah.
But of course, all that extra money, and that's why I kind of take a lot of that rancor and that supposed bitchiness that he had with a grain of salt, because it turns out ultimately, when all is said and done, all you have to do is throw a few bucks at these people, and they're all of a sudden they're happy again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Rodgers and the Packers, it's a toxic relationship, and they're also codependent, and right. And the money is essentially, on one side it's the money, which for Rodgers, and the other side is it's the opportunity to win another championship, keeping them together. It's like they're staying together for the sake of the kids. And they figure the sake of the kids is 4 more seasons, or more than likely 2 or 3, till that contract can be bought out or traded or whatever. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, it's going to be fun to see what happens. Rodgers has signed this deal, and he's going to be unhappy sometime sooner than later. He's going to bitch and moan about something because it's what he does. At least that's what he's done over the past 5 years or so. So it's going to be I just found it interesting that there's the reaction from especially the Lions fan base, who have this. The Lions fan base is a very vocal segment that absolutely despises Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Because they're too young to remember when the Packers were beatable. Going back pre-90s, essentially.
Right.
Before Favre, realistically.
Right.
I think for a lot of them, they're losing their minds because they're thinking, oh my God, another 4 years of Rodgers kicking the Lions' ass. But this is one of the relationships that's probably ultimately going to end badly, going to end in disappointment. I'm kind of following the view is that, they've gone all in the Super Bowl, but how often do those moves kind of really pay off? So it's going to be fascinating to see what's going on in Green Bay. But the other big move today, Greg, this wasn't involving a big contract signing. This was a huge mega deal trade for a franchise quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback. Apparently, Greg, the Broncos, who have a habit of trading for aging quarterbacks at the end. So I would say Russell Wilson at the end of his career, but he is an aging quarterback. Apparently, the Washington Commanders were in on this, was hoping to make a deal for this, but they outbid them, the Broncos, and they went all in by dealing their starting quarterback, or at least supposedly their QB of the future, Drew Lock. Tight end Noah Fant, a former first-round draft pick. Defensive lineman Shelby Harris. 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick, which all went to the Seahawks in exchange for Russell Wilson, who is a legit franchise quarterback, and a 4th-round pick. This one, when I got the alert on my phone, this one, I literally went, oh, wow. I was not expecting this. I mean, there had been talk that the Broncos were ready to do something, that their window, if it was closing, if it wasn't already closed, and this was not a particularly good year for them. Russell Wilson is still a very good, very productive quarterback who I think can still win a Super Bowl, at the very least take you pretty deep into the playoffs. But, it's funny how you mentioned that the Packers are not going to rebuild. They're still going to go all in with a very old quarterback. Well, the Seahawks kind of decided that we have that quarterback and he's marketable. Instead of keeping him and extending him and tying up our salary cap to a massive amount, let's start to rebuild. I think this might be what's the old bromide, the old saying? It's better to trade a player 1 year too early than 1 year too late. And this might be where the Seahawks are right now. Could they make the playoffs if Russell Wilson one more time? Yeah, I think they could definitely make the playoffs one more time. I mean, they damn near did it this past year. But I think they see which way the tide is moving with that team, and they see a rebuild coming. They had a valuable commodity in a seller's market when it comes to quarterbacks, and they got a king's ransom for Russell Wilson from the Broncos. For the past couple years, Greg, the Broncos have been one of those teams saying, if we had a franchise quarterback, we could really make some noise and make a Super Bowl run.
Yeah.
Well, they finally backed up that chatter and got themselves a franchise quarterback. Now it's just a matter to see if that is true or not, that the team is ready to win big with the right quarterback, like the Rams, for example. We'll see if the Broncos can replicate that. Seems like we're having teams, Greg, starting to replicate the Rams' blueprint for winning the Super Bowl by getting that franchise quarterback and paying the moon for him and let the chips fall where they may. But the Broncos got themselves one hell of a quarterback, but they also paid one hell of a lot in return.
Yeah, and Russell Wilson, though, at 33 is a baby compared to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
of course.
He's more like he's Stafford's age.
He's Stafford's age, and I was just brought him up on his numbers up on Pro Football Reference, and you're right. He's still a very, very, very good quarterback. He's consistently posting QB ratings in triple digits. Yeah. He's not quite, because of age, of course. He's not quite the mobile guy he's not the threat with the legs like he used to be, but he's still like you said, a very good quarterback. And you're absolutely right about the Broncos. They've been kind of wandering around looking for that guy for a number of years. They got a rabid fan base there who just lives and breathes Broncos. And, so they, and you're right about the price, sure. Yeah. But, again, this is all about short-term stuff. Nobody cares. Nobody in Denver cares about what they gave up. All they see is Russell Wilson coming in, and as they should. This is again, another guy who might go to the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Very good, very elite quarterback still. Mm-hmm. And as we've seen at age 33, that's nothing anymore. That's nothing. And so he could certainly, this could be one of those perfect kind of Peyton Manning thing, where a guy just goes in and everything else kind of falls into place. Now, do they have other issues? Of course, like any other NFL roster does. Of course, the Broncos have more than just the quarterback, but they're, like you said, getting a very good one. As far as Seattle goes, though, that's interesting because everything we're saying about Russell Wilson applies to Seattle. If he had stayed in Seattle, they had a down year last year, but Pete Carroll's still one of the best coaches in the game, and again, that's another rabid fan base out there in Seattle. I'm not sure what the Seahawks are thinking necessarily. Why they're cutting ties? Have you heard any reasoning why they may be?
I'm guessing. My feeling is I think they just think their window is closed. It's and they're selling high on their big chip that they had. The difference is that the difference between Wilson and Stafford is that Wilson has won things when Stafford didn't, but I think both teams saw we need to do a full rebuild. It's just that I think the Seahawks probably could have strung it on for a few more years, and hovered around the wild card, maybe steal the division. But I think they also saw the fact that they are in the division with the defending Super Bowl champs as well. So I think a few of those things are playing into their thoughts where, the Rams are probably going to be good for another few more years till their contract issues start to catch up with them. So let's kick the can down the road a few years. Let's start to rebuild. And from all accounts, I think the fan base is kind of falling behind it, really. I think they saw this coming over the past year or so, that because there has been talk that Wilson might move on, and it's finally happened. And with the Seahawks fan base, I'm sure they're saying they see all that draft capital and it gives you a lot of options. And odds are that they're probably going to be better draft picks than the Lions ended up with when it came to. What are the odds that Denver's going to win the Super Bowl? They aren't as good of a team as the Rams were. So those draft picks could end up at the very least probably in the 20s. Who knows, Super Bowl, whatever. But regardless, those draft picks could probably end up being a little bit decent, better than what the Lions got in exchange for Stafford. But the other thing is also they got a couple. Noah Fant is a pretty darn good tight end. Even though I think he's in the last year of his, because he was in the same draft as T.J. Hockenson. Actually, they played together in Iowa. So he's a legit starting tight end. The defensive lineman they got is one of those serviceable rotation guys. And Drew Lock's the wild card. If Drew Lock turns out to be a legitimate starting quarterback, this could be a huge win for Seattle, but the jury's still well out on Locke if he's going to be a legit quarterback or not. It's obvious Denver didn't see it happening, so they just threw him in, because they need to even up salaries between all this sort of thing. So, I know we were always on record, Greg, saying the team that gets the best player wins the trade. And obviously Wilson is the best player, and he is still young enough to be a very productive player for a long time yet. But in the NFL, draft capital means so much. With it being a salary cap league and being able to replace people on cheap contracts for 5 years. So this is one of those deals, I think, where both teams got what they wanted. Denver finally got their starting quarterback, their franchise starting quarterback.
Right.
And Seattle is able to start a rebuild, but get a huge kickstart, which can shorten that rebuild considerably with the draft capital they got.
Oh, yeah. No, it's for sure. I think you hit the nail on the head. You can't say that about too many trades in pro sports where you can literally look at what each team gets back and say, yeah, that was good for that team and good for that team.
Right.
But again, it's all about philosophies right now. And I think, your suggestion that the Seahawks' window, they feel the window may be that this is the right time. Now, you mentioned sell high. They absolutely sold high, no question about it. I mean, and those draft picks, by the way, Al, are, of course, obviously in addition to what they have.
Right. Yeah.
Those first-round draft picks aren't in swap picks. They are getting out first-round picks in addition to the ones they already have, which enables you now to do even more things.
Exactly.
You can, of course, hold on to them and use them, of course.
Yep.
Or you can flip them to another team for something else. So what they've done though, what Seattle has done though, of course, is now they have all this capital. Now they gotta use it wisely.
Yeah.
And or else this, you mentioned the Seahawks fan base being on board right now. Well, they won't be on board in 2 or 3 years if they see Wilson leading the Broncos to the promised land, and the Seahawks are still trying to figure out what to do with all this capital they got. But at least the Seahawks have a Super Bowl win within the last decade or so. It's not like they're with some sort of a drought. The Broncos, however, and the Broncos have also won, of course, in relatively recent years. But they've always been kind of a jaded franchise. It always seemed to be one, always seemed to just not quite be able to get there until Elway finally won those 2 rings late in his career.
Right.
But I mean, hey, this is a franchise that's had to suffer through Tim Tebow. Has had a lot of weird,
and still managed to win a playoff game with Tim Tebow. I'm still shocked at that, but. Right,
has had a lot of weird coaching scenarios. Have had some high-profile draft picks kind of fritter out on them, mainly due to usually due to injury.
Right.
So this is their chance now to plug Wilson in and build around him and so I think you're right. I think it's a good trade for both franchises.
Yeah, you make a good point about the fan base, especially one in Seattle specifically, being probably okay with starting a rebuild right now. Much like the Lions fan base was fine with getting rid of their franchise quarterback and kickstarting a rebuild. But if the Lions aren't competing for a playoff spot, say 2023, people are going to start getting very, very restless. I have a feeling it'll be the same thing, if not sooner, in Seattle, because obviously they're definitely a better team than the Lions were when they're starting this rebuild, and they have more draft capital than the Lions have. So, I'm sure with these draft picks, Seattle's expecting it to be a very quick rebuild or reload or whatever the hell you want to call it. So, but it was just fascinating to see these moves go down today. And then you got a team like the Washington football team, the Commanders, who are they were supposedly in the hunt trying to get Wilson and fell short. I guess they offered draft picks over 3 seasons, but I had no idea how much what those draft picks were going to be. Now, and so that really shows us how needy teams are when it comes to a legit quarterback. I mean, Washington doesn't have a quarterback at all. There's a lot of teams you can say they don't have a legit NFL starting quarterback right now. No, say what you will about Jared Goff as a quarterback, he is, he can play in the NFL. He may not take this team where you want him to go, but at the very least, he is better than a lot of the options out there right now. If I was really a QB needy team, looking at what supposedly is coming up in the draft and what's not available in free agency or in the trade market, oh my goodness, I don't know what I would be thinking right now. A team like Washington, Ron Rivera's team, oh my God, they got to be wondering what the hell are we going to do with quarterback. So, all right, with that, we need to move on to the other big story in the NFL. And the NFL, as always, is unabashed in their hypocrisy and their what's good for, we'll get into the gambling stuff. So, Monday, the NFL announced that Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley had been suspended for at least 1 year for gambling on NFL games. And this is the quote, wanting to, quote, uphold the integrity of the game. I love that integrity of the game stuff. The NFL says the bets took place within a 5-day period in late November 2021. While Ridley was on the non-football illness list, so he wasn't even playing football at the time, he was away from the team facilities, and he bet on the Falcons to win as part of parlays, which says he's not a good gambler right there, that he's betting on parlays. Ridley on Twitter confirmed the gambling, saying it was only $1,500, but of course, not mentioning that $1,500 probably cost him $10 million in salary. So the NFL being so gung-ho about protecting the integrity of the game, they suspended him for a year, which leads you to think what's going through the NFL mind when it comes to this stuff, because, one, the NFL has done nothing as of yet in regard to Brian Flores' allegations that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross wanted to tank and offered him $100,000 per loss, essentially asking his head coach to throw games. Gambling, Let's not forget the NFL and every other sports league has gone all in on gambling, casinos, and sportsbook partnerships. I mean, we're here to talk that these teams want sports books in the stadiums, for Christ's sake. They want it to be to the point where you could literally bet on every play of every game. Let's not forget that domestic violence and other violent outbursts will garner far less severe suspensions than what Ridley got for gambling. Look at Ray Rice got 2 games for what he did. I think the worst we've seen is 4 games, 6 games, maybe 8 for some of them. And in regard to the integrity of the game, scandals like Spygate and Deflategate resulted in far less punitive punishment than compared to Ridley. I mean, Tom Brady got 4 games for his which I thought that whole thing was stupid myself, where he got 4 games for messing around with the inflation of his of footballs, and of course Spygate with their with the Pats recording other teams' practices. That ended up, I think, more than anything, I think, cost them a draft pick and money. So don't give me this integrity of the game bullshit when you don't care about it. I don't even want to go into how much they supposedly care about the health of the players. Yet they denied how severe concussions could be to the long-term health of players for decades. So I just find the whole thing. Should players gamble on the sport they play in? No, that's a bad look. And I'm sure the actual sports books and casinos and the large gambling concerns do not like that. They want the games to be clean. They don't want the people betting on games thinking the games are rigged, the games are fixed. But for the NFL to be worried about the integrity of the game while being all in on gambling themselves, it's hugely hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is just off the charts, because the NFL for years, and Major League Baseball and all the other leagues, their biggest no-no has always been, Greg, no gambling, no gambling. I guess it's even supposed to be plastered on the walls in the clubhouse. No gambling. Yet, they have the dollar signs in their eyes when they saw all this money being thrown at them by casinos and sports books and these gambling concerns, and so they decide to essentially talk out both sides of their mouths when it comes to sports betting. So Ridley's in the wrong, but the NFL is full of shit as well.
Well, I mean, they you talked about all this with the apps, the casino, the sports gaming and everything, sports book and so forth. The ironic thing about this, Al, is if and you're right, you can't, of course, as a player, you can't bet on games, and that's I hope we can all agree on that. But the funny thing about it is that the reason why you mentioned the hypocrisy, and all these other issues that maybe they don't take as seriously. But the funny thing is that the reason they're doing this and they're throwing the book at Ridley is because they are very protective of this house of cards that they have built.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Good choice of words. Exactly.
I mean, it can all come crumbling down if you mentioned the integrity as, kind of wink, wink kind of a thing. But what the word means is that the league, I can tell you, the league's worst nightmare is if there's any sort of hint. Now, there's already a lot of talk about, I think I saw it on Twitter during and after the Super Bowl. Oh, the NFL wanted the Rams to win. Oh, look at this call, look at that call. The refs are. Oh
yeah, you see that all the time especially on social media or sports talk radio. Oh, the game's fixed. Yes.
Right. I think for a while there, what was trending on Twitter was the hashtag "the fix is on" or something like that. But of course, fans tend to forget that there was an egregious offensive face mask pass interference call that went against the Rams.
Right.
That where the Bengals scored a touchdown on that shouldn't have been a touchdown. I mean, maybe it wasn't a touchdown. It was a long play.
Right.
That shouldn't have happened. Nobody thinks about that or remembers that conveniently because it was the first half. But the bottom line was that you always see all this talk that the NFL is fixed and the refs are in on it. They want certain teams to win and so forth. And there's already that kind of mindset. Yeah. Which is kind of fascinating to me because it's at the zenith of the popularity of these sports book apps and so forth. That yet these fans that keep complaining or are worried about the NFL being fixed, which it's not that I know of, are yet gobbling up these apps and are using these apps, like you said, betting on just about everything. You can bet on the length of a kickoff, the length of a punt, if a punt will be fair caught or not. I mean, it's unbelievable what things.
And I like betting. I use these apps. I'm not against sports betting,
but that's all going to. The nightmare scenario, Al, for the NFL would be if all this stuff about fixes and there's refs are crooked and all this other stuff. If there's any hint of any of that stuff even being remotely true, a lot of this golden calf is going to go away, and they know that. And so when poor Ridley here, and I'm saying poor, not, I mean, I know he's at fault, but this little Ridley guy now, they've got to make and I don't disagree that you have to make some sort of example out of a guy like this because you can't let this get out of hand. This the whole thing goes back, of course, to the early '60s when Karras and Hornung were got in trouble because they were betting on games that, of course, they weren't playing in, obviously, but still, that was 60 years ago.
Yeah, that was illegal betting as well.
Way before the league was as powerful as it is and commanded the entertainment dollar that it does. But even back then, the league was, Roselle and so forth, were very paranoid and overly cautious about any of this stuff becoming endemic. And so there was a and rightfully so, they took action. But they can't, Al, on the one hand, I don't blame the NFL for making an example out of Ridley. But like you said, it is against the backdrop of all of this other stuff that's going on.
That's what makes it a bad look, is that, they're...
Yeah, which kind of makes it appear, which gives that impression that,
we want all the benefits and we don't want all the downsides. That's exactly what
right.
the
They're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and that becomes a slippery slope. But they're right. They're right to nip this in the bud. You can't. Yeah. You cannot have. I don't care. How hypocritical it may look. You can because it may look like hypocrisy, but the scenario, the flip side, if it got out of hand, would be far more detrimental to the league than optics.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is one of those things there. I think what's frustrating is, okay, yeah, sure, throw the book at them for gambling, then they should throw the book at guys who beat their wives and beat their girlfriends and commit crimes, commit felonies and things like that. Yeah. That's, I think, one of them, or for that matter, what's going on with Stephen Ross, essentially actively, if the Flores' allegations are true, he was literally wanted his team to throw games, which is, and that's something that the betting concerns want nothing to do with. They, as much as the NFL wants to keep it clean, they sure as hell do, because this is their legalized gambling was their pennies from heaven, so to speak. This is what they've been wanting for decades, to have legalized betting in places other than Nevada. So now that they got it, they do not want to see it spoiled, because the money is just absolutely bonkers. So if anything, the casinos want to keep it even cleaner than the NFL. So I'm sure they have no problems with this, but it's just how discipline just seems to be all over the place in the NFL when it comes to, something happens, this guy gets 2 games, this guy gets 4, that guy gets the season. Be consistent. Make it a little more open as to how you do how the discipline is laid out. For that matter, this probably should be really negotiated in the next bargaining agreement with the players. Bam. You beat your wife, you're done for the season. You're off for 16 games or whatever it may be. I would love to see them be a little more proactive or a little more aggressive in how they handle things other than gambling. When Ray Rice gets 2 games for nearly killing somebody. No. But then if a guy puts $1,500 on a couple games, he gets a season. Ray Rice gets 2 games. That's where people are like priorities, if you know what I'm saying.
And I don't know. Now that I think about it, I'm not so sure that it's hypocrisy as much as it is misplaced priorities. Yeah. And there's you're absolutely right. I mean, you mentioned Ray Rice and so forth, and there's other examples.
Yeah, there's other ones that have.
You have to, and I know that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's an apples and oranges comparison. A guy, gambles like this Ridley guy, and you have the Ray Rice scenario. Okay, 2 obviously very, very different things, but it's about it. Like I think you touched on it at the top of the discussion. If you're truly worried about the integrity of the game, then there's got to be some sort of paying attention to of these off the field, the abuse and the whatever you want to call it. And for whatever reason, domestic violence, which is the big one, of course, seems to be more prevalent in the NFL than other, at least reported, than other sports. Now, I don't know if that's because I'm not sure it's because the players are bigger and stronger. They're alpha males. I'm not sure if it has to do with the what's that acronym or abbreviation with the brain thing?
CTE.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's early onset of that that's causing some of this behavior. Right. But it just seems to be more prevalent in the NFL than it is in other sports.
Yeah, it's like Ray Caruth killed murdered the mother of his child. He probably would have got 6 games.
I forgot about that.
Or God, let's not even get into Aaron Hernandez. So, but it's. I think that's what I guess the frustrating part is. I wish they were more consistent in their punishment, how they do things, and don't give me the integrity of the game bullshit with all the other stuff that the owners do. Because we are really right now in a anti-owner environment as we're seeing a reaction to what the NFL has been doing and what we're seeing what's going on in MLB. So, all right. With that, I guess it's a good time to have question 2 of the birthday game.
Well, this is for the fathead.
Yeah. Oh boy, for Giant Greg.
That's right. Okay, baseball, died in 2020, 7-time All-Star. Excuse me. Was the National League Rookie of the Year in 1964. I will tell you that. He was he was the MVP. He won the MVP with the White Sox, as a matter of fact. That's how good he was. He led the American League in home runs twice, led the NL in slugging percentage once, and again, widely thought of as a high potential as a Hall of Famer. Never happened. It probably won't ever happen. Even by the Veterans Committee, fell short there, and was a first baseman and third baseman.
Could we be talking about Dick? Don't call me Richie Allen.
We are talking about Dick Allen. Very good. Very good. Yes, sir. Dick Allen, and there's even groups on Facebook and elsewhere who want to get this guy in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I never felt it. I know Dick Allen was a very, very good ball player.
Yeah.
And frankly, endured a lot of shit when he played in Philadelphia, racially and otherwise.
Yeah, an outspoken black man didn't fly too well in the mid '60s. Right.
And I know you've brought him up when we've had Ray Scott on talking about athletes of that era kind of being in the 60s being outspoken and so forth. And he just, he seemed to be kind of enigmatic at times, but he was without question
he could hit. He could hit.
God.
Yeah.
And so, but I just never felt to him as a Hall of Famer. But you know what? If they put him in, he's one of these guys. This is
the old. If Harold Baines is a Hall of Famer, Dick Allen's a Hall of Famer. I always put it that. I know we could go down a rabbit hole with this stuff, but he was one of those guys. I didn't realize how really good he was until you open up his baseball reference page, and then you had those stats hit you in the face, and you also have to remember. He played the first part of his career in the dead ball era. I should say the second dead ball era, which was the 60s. So,
and his career slugging percentage is .534.
Yeah,
career.
That's awesome.
That's something to sneeze at.
No.
And he this is a guy. He led the American League in home runs twice, the National League in slugging percentage once, and in the AL twice, and he led each league in on-base percentage once apiece.
Yeah, and what gave him away was when he said he won an MVP with the White Sox.
Yeah. He's missed.
And that's always an MVP is always when they bring up Hall of Fame consideration. Was he an MVP or did he get MVP votes? Dick Allen got MVP.
Mr. OPS.
Yes,
he's a career OPS.
Could you see a guy like him today would just be an absolute monster?
Yeah, and I just I would never cry if he put him in.
Yeah.
But I never felt him as an MVP, as a Hall of Fame guy. But I tell you, the more I'm looking at his number, you mentioned about somebody who you don't appreciate until maybe later on.
Yeah.
You look at some of his numbers, and he was, a very dangerous hitter.
Yeah.
There's no question
and the other thing, he played for the most part teams that weren't particularly good, in the Phillies and the White Sox and things like that.
True.
Which always plays into the perception of a player's talent.
Well,
but undeniably he was talent. And I'm with you at this point. I don't even arguing about Hall of Fame merits at this point is just. It's so subjective at this point. Everybody has their own feelings on it.
You're right. You're right. I mean, he only had 9 career at-bats in the postseason. They all came in with the Phillies in '76.
Yeah.
And, so you're right. He played for a lot of bad teams. Of course, he was on that infamous '64 Phillies team.
The one that collapsed. Yeah.
But that was the year that he won the Rookie of the Year. But,
and the always don't call me Richie, because he was Richie in the first part of his career. Asked the media to stop doing that, and they didn't, and that was it was a very, very toxic relationship he had with the press. And that's again the outspoken black man who please just call me what I want to be called, and they wouldn't do it, which says volumes of what it was like. Back in the '60s, he just wanted to be called, Dick, and they wouldn't do it. It's actually ridiculous thinking about it now.
He had the famous line, because he was always being moved between first base and third base, even a little bit of outfield, and his thing was always, "I'll play first base, I'll play third base, I'll play the outfield. The only place I won't play is in Philadelphia.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. That's a great line too. Yeah.
Yeah, I forced the trade to the Cardinals, and even
that was the other thing that the retconning of his career in Philadelphia by Philadelphians was very ridiculous, because he was hated in Philadelphia, and then after his career, he's one of our own. Bullshit. You hated him when he played for you.
Well, he used to stand on first base and scrawl messages with his spikes in the dirt of how unhappy he was.
Yeah.
But anyway, good job. Fathead is yours.
I don't know. Maybe I should have thrown it. Now I gotta. Consider we're talking about throwing games. All right. Talking about Dick Allen and his battles with professional baseball, I guess it's a good way to segue into what's going on in baseball right now. This has been pretty much a bi-weekly topic for us when we talk about the lockout, the Major League Baseball lockout. As of right now, the deadline for, I'll put it how I put it in the notes here. MLB reportedly plans to cancel more games if no deal is reached by Tuesday, 3/8, which is, we're actually recording this Tuesday night, and there's been no word to any kind of breakthrough or settlement in the negotiations, so it looks like Major League Baseball is going to cancel games. The funny part is, though, Greg, we had a drop-dead date last Monday, I believe, where they've already said, we're going to cancel the first week of the season if we don't settle. There was no, obviously, agreement, so they canceled the first week of the season. But when they made this announcement, they said, if we settle by 3/8, we can have a 162-game season. So what happened? The owners are all over the place with their messaging. There's a lot of stupid people in the world, but Major League Baseball owners must think Major League Baseball fans are fucking toddlers, the way they feel. But obviously, Major League Baseball is not doing too well right now. The MLBPA has made some concessions. Supposedly, the owners have made a few concessions, but it really feels like the sticking point is the competitive. What is it? They call it the luxury tax, the competitive balance tax. That really seems to be the sticking point. Reportedly, Major League Baseball has offered to start the CBT, the luxury tax, essentially, at $228 million, going to $238 million by the end of the deal. The players wanted it to start at $238 and finish at $263. That really seems to be the big deal when it comes to negotiations. And I don't know what's going to happen here, Greg. I don't even like talking about it. We just have to because of what's going on. I did find it interesting when I was doing a little research on putting together the show notes, is that for the first time in memory, there was a polling was done with Major League Baseball fans, and fans are actually siding with the players in polling. And it was like 45% were out on the side of the players, another 30% said, I don't know or I don't care, and only about 25% or so were on the side of the owners. So at the very least, people are seeing through the owners' bullshit when it comes to their crying poor, and that has always been the big thing, that the owners say, we can only afford to do so much, when the luxury tax is a way to stop themselves from spending. That's all it is, because they can't control their own spending. It's just so frustrating to hear this go back and forth. And even if this deal does ultimately go through, or if they're able to work things out, this deal is still going to favor the owners. The players are not ultimately going to get the numbers they want when it comes where the luxury tax is ultimately going to sit. It's going to be lower than what they're asking for right now. And I don't know, Greg. It's so frustrating in that I want to see baseball, but I don't want to see the owners essentially run roughshod over the players' union, because it really feels like, Greg, the owners thought we're going to break the union, we're going to make them sweat, they're going to break ranks, they're going to argue between themselves. Say the rich players from the poor players and the middle classes, they're all going to argue between themselves and want to settle. And to the players' credit, they have remained steadfast in unity. And they're doing things like they set up $1 million, which, it's not a lot, but it's something. They set up $1 million fund for the people who work at ballparks who are not going to get paid at the start of the season. Which then all of a sudden the owners scramble to do the same thing, which I found absolutely hilarious. So it doesn't look like we're going to get a settlement today. If there would have been, unless something happens in the middle of the night, which I don't see happening, it looks like the owners are going to unilaterally cut games until they make another unilateral decision next week when it comes to when we can cut games. So, and when it comes down to it, Greg, we saw this during the pandemic. I don't think the owners really care all that much until it starts affecting the playoffs. That's all during the pandemic season. All they cared about was getting a full playoff in, pure and simple. I have a feeling Major League Baseball owners would be thrilled to have a 120-game season or something like that, because it would cut their expenses down and they wouldn't have to pay as much as salaries, yet they would still get their full money from TV when it comes to the playoffs. I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, the other thing that's going on right now, Al, is you mentioned the polling kind of favoring the players, but the problem though is that there's a couple of things that are going on with the length of the season. Now, the thing about the season is there's growing. I'm seeing some sentiment out there by the fan base of baseball in general that they don't feel like they have to see 162 games. They feel
We've both been on record saying the season's too long.
They don't feel like they'll be cheated.
Yeah.
Necessarily, but of course that goes against the narrative of their interests in being pro player, because the owners are believe me, perfectly content to let April come and go, because it's low attendance in those months and then those weeks anyway.
You're right.
Attendance traditionally in April is not great. You've got a lot of rainouts. You've got a lot of bad weather, which keeps people away from the ballpark.
Right.
And there's just the feeling that because the season's so long, that those games, even though they really do matter, don't matter because they're in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, they matter to the records and ultimately how the season ends, but they don't matter to the owner's pocketbook.
But the fans that are saying, hey, I would be okay with 140 to 154 game season, sounds good. On the surface that, we can live with less games and maybe have maybe get the postseason started earlier. The problem though with that theory is that plays in the owner's hands.
Yeah, I know.
Because if the owners get into a situation where they get the fans used to or not missing baseball as much as they thought, or having a shorter season, because a lot of this stuff's going to go away. Once the players come back, games start to be played again. Nobody's going to care about those 25 games missed in April that much. But if the owners get the fans used to almost like a trial run of what a baseball season would look like if there was only 140 games in the regular season, we were to expand the playoffs a little bit. That's where I think the owners would like to go. The owners would like to. I'll tell you what, if the owners could put 16 teams in the playoffs, they'd do it. There's no question about it.
Oh, God,
so
they'd be happy to throw half the league in. Yeah.
They're incrementally adding, or at the very least proposing, additions to the postseason where there's more and more teams. It kind of mimics the other leagues that have lots of teams in the playoffs. And, baseball's looking at it as, I should want to say baseball, the owners are looking at it as, well, maybe what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Maybe we need to have 14 to 16 teams in our league, in our organization, our entity in the playoffs as well. Yeah. Now, the problem with that, is that it works. If you're going to talk about 16 teams in the playoffs like they do in the NBA and the NHL, well, you've got playoff series.
Yeah, not just one game bullshit.
You can't have every series, of course, be a best of 5 or best of 7 and have that many teams in the playoffs unless you start the playoffs in September.
Yeah.
Or else you'll be playing the playoffs around Thanksgiving. And I'm not joking when I say that it could last that long if you have that many teams and you want to have all these series going on now. So, but I think you're right. The owners would love to recoup any losses that they incur earlier in the year in October.
Yeah.
And they can get, if they get more teams in the playoffs in the tournament,
yep,
then that's even better for them.
Yeah. And that the increased playoffs, increasing the number of teams in the playoffs, that's pretty much the players' trump card. If they have to agree to that for anything to move forward. So I obviously that's probably going to be the ultimate when we do get a settlement. That's going to be part of it. Probably a 14-team playoff. So honestly, yeah. I mean, as much as I despise ownership, I would have no problem with them shortening the season, start mid-April, end mid-September. If you want to extend the playoffs, great. I love playoff baseball. But as you said, yeah, we can't have one game play-in playoffs when you have this many teams. You're going to have at least 5-game series and things like that. So
right.
Who knows how? No, baseball's playoffs could look entirely different a few years from now than what we have right now. So then again, Greg, we're old enough to remember when the playoffs were the World Series. One team made it from each league. Really, when I first started to realize what baseball was and started to follow baseball was 1968 when I was a very, very young kid. And that was the last year of no playoffs at all, no divisions. You won the league and you went to the World Series. Right. So, we'll never see that again. But you can also do better than having one-game play-ins. It's essentially a coin flip to make, which I hate. It's one thing to have that in a tournament like the NCAAs or something. But baseball, where you play 162 games or however it ends up being, and then you have to play one game, that's crazy. I do not like how the wild card is handled right now. Hopefully, when they get things figured out, then they will get things figured out. There's too much money at stake. If you're going to have more teams in the playoffs, then fix the playoffs. And if that means shortening the season by a few weeks, I have no problem with that. And in the end, the players will still make us good money. But I guess the other thing I need to bring up is that I still think, compared to the revenue the owners are bringing in, especially when it comes to TV money and gambling money now,
right.
I still think many players, especially the young players, are still woefully underpaid to what the owners are raking in. And we see that pretty much in all sports at this point, that players are underpaid compared to the revenue they are bringing in. I mean, we've had that discussion over and over in college, for example.
Well, the thing about the the play-in thing you're talking about, the other thing about that, it's weird because it can change sometimes the way general managers run their teams, or at least for that year. If they look at, does my team have a chance to play that one extra game that could lead to could be the first domino,
right?
The topples, and leads to some sort of Cinderella playoff run. Look at the Braves. Nobody had the Braves winning the World Series. Nobody had that. And so you come to a scenario where you get a trade deadline situation, or you may, depending if the general manager is maybe on the last year of his contract, or if he's trying to save his own hide, and he sees that opportunity to maybe if I do this, we're on the fringes of getting that play-in game. It's weird. It puts teams in a weird situation. But if you extend the playoffs out to everything is a series now, and you start, you start these playoffs like the third week of September, ish, and then do away entirely with these playoff wild card games.
Yeah, at the very least, give us 2 or 3. I mean, something.
Right.
Yeah,
I know Bob Hoskins has come up with a bunch of scenarios, and he was trying to come up with scenarios that would be shoehorned into the current 162-game schedule. And
you can't do it.
And he's trying to put all these games. And I remember he came up with some scenario where best out of 3, you play all 3 games in one ballpark, and
Yeah, that sounds like pandemic level thinking, that kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah. All right, they have come to agreement on a few things, though, Greg, and that would be some significant rule changes supposedly in 2023. Yeah. They are planning on banning the shift,
right?
Implementing a pitch clock, which would be 14 seconds with bases empty, 19 with runners on base, and making the bases larger, going from 15 inches square to 18 inches square. And in Major League Baseball's parlance, the changes are part of an effort to, quote, streamline the process and add excitement to the game. They love using that excitement to the game. You know, I have no problem with the pitch clock. Hey, I'm great. Better damn enforce it. That's the one thing with a lot of these rule changes. They're great in theory, but you have umpires who refuse or get really slack on enforcing rules. And so, especially with the pitch clock. So, I mean, I've seen, people online have talked about their experiences watching pitch clocks, like in the minor leagues, and they're saying umpires don't even pay attention to it. You know, if you're going to do this kind of stuff, then you better goddamn enforce it, especially a pitch clock. You know, because I do agree that they need to speed the game up. There's various reasons how you could do that, but the main thing it really comes down to is pitcher gets the ball, gets the set, throws the ball. Batter stays in the box, doesn't go off for a walk, plays with every piece of equipment he has on, and then steps back in. He has to stay in the box. The pitcher can't sit there and wander around the mound and spit in his hand and all this and then get back in the mound where they go a minute between pitches. You know, if you enforce this stuff, great. It could help the game because right now, when you have 9-inning games that go 4 hours long, and that's relatively commonplace, the pace of the game is broken. I know some of that can be contributed to, the games become 3 true outcomes, home runs, walks, and strikeouts. You don't see slap hitters don't really exist the way they used to and things like that. You don't have guys coming up where they're just trying to make contact. You have guys coming up and they're trying to hit it over the fence. So how the game has changed analytically, it does play into that. But you can speed up the game if you do enforce some of these rules. But they have to make sure the umpires do it. And we've seen this stuff time and time again, Greg, where the umpires have hijacked the strike zone as well. Every one of them seems to have a different strike zone. So I think they need far more consistency in their umpiring if some of this stuff's going to work.
Absolutely, no question about that. The question, of course, is a faster game a better game? You mentioned the three outcome scenario.
Yeah, three true outcomes. Yes.
And the other thing too about that is that now you've got guys come out of the bullpen. Everybody throws 95 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Everybody's now they're not all necessarily have command of these pitches, but it's hard to have these slap hitters or these contact guys. The reason why everybody wants to hit home run is because that's still the best.
That's a good point. To score.
To score off.
Yeah, that goes back to Earl Weaver. Where he said on Bradley was 2 walks and a 3-run homer.
Right.
He was analytics before it was true. It was called that.
And you have these. It's hard to do that manufacture a run thing.
Yeah.
Off a guy coming out of the bullpen throwing 96 miles an hour.
Yeah, because Joey Gallo, I think, when they're talking about banning the shift, and people would say, well, why don't you just hit it the other way? And Joey Gallo, who is one of the best hitters in baseball, would say, I have a guy coming fresh out of the bullpen throwing 99 miles an hour, and you just want me to say it's like it's so easy they hit the ball through to place it right there? You do it. Because he's like, I can't all the time. So I can see exactly what you're saying here is that the game has changed. The athletes are so much better, and they've learned through mathematics that the best way to score runs is to work counts, get on base via the walk, or however, and then hit the ball out of the park. So, but I do kind of miss those. And we're both of the age where we got to see Mark Fidrich pitch. And if one of his games went more than 2 hours, something was wrong.
Right.
But he was the epitome of catch the ball, get the pitch, throw the ball, do it again. No, he'd throw every 15 seconds. And plus he didn't have, as Mike Hargrove was coined, human rain delays in the batter's box either. Because now every batter in every game steps out. They almost always step out of the box after every pitch. Yeah. That needs to be. You can't do that if you want the game to speed up. Stay in the box, and then don't take time to mound, just throw the goddamn ball. They want to speed up the game. That's how you speed up the game. The shift and all that, whatever. And I can already see the controversies when guys are being moved around the field, and they only got to move where's the limit? How far can you move? Can you be even with second base if you move the shortstop over, or can you only move? This is all stuff that needs to be figured out, and it's going to be a controversy. And the bases being bigger, I think that could be maybe a safety thing as well. You won't have guys stepping on feet and things like that.
Right.
But I think that's just I don't think that's going to make much difference at all for the most part.
No.
I think the big one is the pitch clock. That's the one the owners think, because the owners have been doing what they've done you have to face 3 batters things when you come out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
And they've done they've talked about pitch clocks in the past, and they've gotten rid of the intentional walk. They're doing all these things trying to increase the pace of the game. Right. You want to increase pace of the game? Enforce a pitch clock. Make guys stay in the box. And I don't know what you can do about 3 true outcomes though, because that's just how the game is today.
Well, here's I've got something about the 3 true outcomes in a second. But going back to what you said about the pitch clock, when does that start? Does it start?
That's another good question. That all needs to be figured out.
Does that start when the pitcher receives the ball back from the catcher,
or does it start when the catcher catches it, or what? Yeah,
right. Or does it or if we're at the beginning of an at bat, at the beginning of an at bat, when does that pitch clock start? When the batter gets in the batter's box? I don't know.
Yeah, and in football, for example, we've heard that was a big topic this year with the using up too much time. Yeah. And how it was enforced we learned it was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. It was that the umpire, the referee on the field, looks at the clock, sees 0, and then he looks down and see if the ball has been snapped, essentially giving the quarterback another second or two. Which kind of defeats the purpose of the goddamn thing. So that makes a great point. How do you enforce this, and how do you what rules are put in place for this to be fair?
Yeah, we're looking at it. Excuse me. We're looking at it on television in a different perspective as the official on the field. But the thing back to the 3 true outcome thing. Do you think MLB would ever? Now I don't know if the players would agree to this, but do you think MLB would ever consider making the ballparks bigger, or would that cut into paying seats?
It really depends, because they made them smaller to increase home runs, because they thought that's what people wanted to see.
Maybe is there a way to make the alleys bigger, deeper? Something that.
So you want original Comerica?
Well, yeah, really. Yeah. I mean, exactly, because some of these, like the new Yankee Stadium, for example, these little, and of course Fenway for years. Now, I wonder if you expanded if the outfield, at least the alleys, I'm not sure if you could do it down the lines, but if some of these home runs, Al, that I see that are hit in the alleys, in a lot of the old term, there would never been a ballpark, a home run in such and such ballpark. Do you think they would ever consider pushing some of these fences out?
I would say
10, 15
no,
feet?
Because it would cost the owners money in both revenue and seats, and also it cost them in capital improvements, that it would cost them money out of their pocket to redo the stadiums. Right. And right now it's pretty obvious they don't want to do anything that's going to cost them money. That's not going to make them money. And we've seen for years how it swings back and forth, for the pitcher seems to dominate, then hitters seem to dominate. So this could change, and maybe just little things like getting rid of the shift could change how the game is played, because that would definitely help left-handed hitters, because we've seen, the shift is really used almost exclusively against left-handed hitters. So I don't know. We'll see how this all goes down. But all these rule changes sound nice in theory, but they got to be enforced correctly, and they need to make it fair. And I don't know. There's just so many variables here that they need to get it right. But I do agree they need to fix the pace of the game. I'm just not sure if these are the ways they exactly do it, other than the pitch clock, which I do agree with. All right. Let's touch a little bit of the Red Wings, Greg. They actually made some personnel moves, but the biggest one of all was the Red Wings waived their veteran defenseman, Danny DeKeyser. This is in order to make room for Jacob Vrana, who was going to be activated for tonight's game. He had missed the entire season at this point due to injury. And he also picked up a defenseman from the Panthers on waivers, Ali Jolivi. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. He's a Finn who was a 5th overall pick in 2016, but kind of didn't live up to the to his draft status in Florida. So the Wings were taking a chance on him after he was waived. But to do all this, they needed to get rid of, I wouldn't say get rid of, they needed to make a roster move, and they decided to move on from Danny DeKeyser. DeKeyser, Greg, was a good player for the Wings for the majority of his career, but he had major back surgery in 2019, and he's never been the same since. He's 32 years old. They believe he's on the last year of his contract. I think. I would have to look that up. But regardless of that, he's also an alternate captain. He's been well thought of, but he just has not been a very good player for a couple years at this point. So he did clear waivers. It looks like he'll likely remain in the organization, as they say, and will be going to Grand Rapids. But, yeah, his numbers have been bad, and he was, for a couple years now. And this season, he was not. It was just more of the same. No goals, 6 assists, at minus 12 in 43 games. And, it's sad to see guys' career, kind of peter out like this. But, DeKeyser was a workhorse for the majority of his career. A guy you could throw out there for 20 minutes a game, like a second pairing kind of guy, a first, second pairing guy. But he's 32, he's slowing down. And if you have a severe back injury, as someone who has had numerous back surgeries, you're never the same after you have back surgery. It's got to be even worse for an athlete. So, it's a shame to see DeKeyser's career as a Wing likely end this way. But he also had a pretty darn good career with them. But this is usually how we see it with older players. They don't get to end their careers on their own terms. The teams usually ultimately do it for them, and that looks like what's happening here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, DeKeyser's he was a guy out who, when he first joined the Red Wings, I think he was like an undrafted player. Yeah,
he was like a college free agent who wasn't drafted and had a great senior year.
Right, and he looked like he was an absolute still, like a diamond in the rough, like a steel. And that was still back in the days where the Red Wings were always being lauded for their drafting and their ability to find players that other teams weren't able to find and so forth. And he really, burst onto the scene and looked like he was exactly the kind of defenseman the Red Wings needed. He was a rushing guy. He could bring the puck out of his own zone. He had some speed. He had some vision. And he seems to be a kind of a player, though, that just has sunk to the level of the team he played for. He never really, the Red Wings were, we were talking about Dick Allen a little while ago about playing on a lot of bad teams. He was just on a lot of bad teams, and they didn't, I'm not sure if it was a kind of a chicken or egg thing. Did he look bad because the Wings were bad?
Right.
Or was he just the type of player that just could never help the situation because he wasn't a trend, he just wasn't the player we thought he might be. He wasn't a bad, he was a good soldier. You never heard a peep out of him. He wasn't, he was never a disruption that I was aware of.
Right.
And I thought, he never embarrassed the team or anything of that nature. I think he was a guy that had a low ceiling, and we didn't see that at first when he first joined the club, and he just never really became, I don't think, the kind of player that we thought.
Yeah, I think they probably expected more of him. He was a solid pro, but but the way he came out of the box, you thought he was going to be an all-star. Right. And that just never seemed to happen with him. Yeah, he played at Western, I believe, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. So, I remember when they signed him and he came flying out of the box and made a lot of noise in his first playoffs, and he said it looked like he was going to be their next all-star, and he didn't turn into that. He just turned into a solid pro who you could throw out there every night, and he would do his job. But, I think you nailed it. He would be a good player on a good team. I think he really plays. He needs that solid. He needs a partner to elevate his game.
Yeah, he probably would have
didn't have that in the last half of his career here in Detroit.
He would have been at best. He would have been on a third. He would have been rotated in and out of a third pairing on a really, really good team. You know, he would have been. You know, he would have certainly not a guy that.
Yeah, because he was first pairing here guy, but the wings weren't very good either. So
I think he would have probably been a third pairing guy at most if he. Was on a really good team, and maybe some guy who got like maybe was the seventh defenseman on a team that was a really good team, and he wouldn't have hurt you necessarily, but it would never have been, you know, where he was in the teams that he did play for.
Yeah.
But again, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and bash the guy. I mean, he was a good soldier all those years. He wasn't a bad player by any stretch.
Yeah, and it says volumes. Right? He was an alternate captain, so. You know, it makes it. Yeah, I think good soldier is a good definition of what he was.
You know, he just didn't. You know, I don't think really scratch the surface of what he could have been. But maybe we expected too much out of him. I mean, you know, we got to be fair about this.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe our expectations of who he was, and what he could do just was unrealistic.
Right. Yeah, it's still hard to see guys as you know, I'm sure he didn't want it to end this way. I would not be surprised if this is if his career ends with this, because I don't really see him, at least the numbers he's been put up the last couple of years, of him being anything more than a training camp invite, you know, after this year. So, you know, but yeah, you know, a 10-year career in the NHL, that's nothing to sneeze at. So. But we'll see what happens with the Kaiser. But I don't think he's ever going to find the fountain of youth. You know, I think this is probably it for him as a Red Wing. All right, one more topic before we wrap it up. Name or jerk of the week. The Pistons are on a tear, Greg. They've won 6 of the last 8, and they're being led by Cade Cunningham, was really making a late run for Rookie of the Year. He's averaged for the season, I believe he's averaging 16.5 points, almost 6 rebounds, 5 assists. 1.5 steals in 51 games. He leads the rookie class in scoring, second in assists, fourth in rebounding. He went for 28 points, 6 rebounds, and 10 assists in their overtime win against the Hawks yesterday. Gave him 4 straight 20-point games. His 17 20-point games leads all first-year players this year. He's actually putting up numbers we haven't seen in Detroit since Isaiah Thomas. He became assistant Pistons rookie in the last 50 years, Isaiah Thomas being the other one, to have games of 20 points, 10 assists, and 5 rebounds. So, Cade Cunningham, he is starting to really live up to the first pick hype. Especially, he played like 42 minutes or something ridiculous against the Hawks last night. He is handling the ball at crunch time. He's taking late game shots. He's now starting to get to the line. He's starting to get the calls that you see stars get. It's like these over the especially since around the All-Star break, he is really. The game is slowing down for him, and he's really starting to figure it out. And he's becoming the player I think the Pistons envisioned when they drafted him, and it's been fun to watch.
Absolutely. Well, everybody's kind of coming around. You know, even Marvin Bagley Jr., who's been
another guy who's putting up some nice numbers.
Right. So, you know, we had sitting on a couple weeks ago. He wasn't really sold on Marvin Bagley Jr., but it seems to really be, fitting in nicely.
Yeah.
His size, his length, the way he's physically put together.
Yeah.
The things that he can do. Maybe this is a case of, and I know it's really early, I understand, but maybe this is it could be a case of he finally finds the right scenario. I mean, with the right teammates, the right coach.
We've seen it before. Yeah. Usually it's the other way around, where the Pistons give up on a player.
Right, yeah.
And, and then they figured out that another team, maybe this is happening to the Pistons this time.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I said to City, I said, could there be a Dwayne Casey factor here? And he said, absolutely, there could be. But the thing about Cunningham, though, is that he is really, he seems to be doing it all. I mean, all.
Yeah.
The defense, we knew we knew he was a good defender for sure. I mean, that was kind of, he certainly wasn't drafted number 1 overall because he's a good defender.
Right.
But we knew that he was a good defender, and he's done nothing but enhance that opinion with his on-ball defense. It's outstanding. The assist, the rebound, with the hiccups, the rebounds, the numbers, everything is really just on point for a guy who you can build around. Yeah. And then you combine that with Sadiq Bey's resurgence.
Yep.
You combine that with Beef Stew continuing to develop and be Beef Stew and do Beef Stew things. The Pistons might have three, like that might be their big three is Stew, Bey, Cunningham. So I mean, they won 6 out of 8, and they've beaten some really good teams. They've won close games. They've won overtime games. They've closed teams out at the end. They haven't,
and they're beating some playoff quality teams, like they beat Boston,
right?
Things like that. Yeah,
all these things are positives that are maybe signs that they're starting to figure out a little bit what it takes to win. We kind of seen this before, though, so I don't want to get too excited. Although we've seen it with a different cast, it wasn't that long ago where the big three was Drummond, Reggie Jackson, and Blake Griffin. Okay, those were the big three when Dwayne Casey signed. Funny thing about this, by the way, is that when I was rereading some stuff I wrote when Dwayne Casey was hired. When Dwayne Casey was hired in 2018, he did not sign up, Al, for a rebuild.
No, he did not.
He came in here thinking he had the big three, Jackson, Drummond, and Griffin. The Pistons were going to build around that. Those were going to be the three guys that were going to be the triumvirate that was going to be leading that team into the playoffs and beyond. And yes, they did make the playoffs in Casey's first year because Blake Griffin had a career year and so forth. But as it turned out, things went sideways, and it ended up being a full-blown rebuild, which is funny because even though Dwayne Casey didn't sign up for that when he that wasn't what attracted him to Detroit, of course, but he has seemed to have he's embraced it. I don't think he's disappointed that things worked out the way they did. Even though he came in here thinking that this was going to be a scenario where I have kind of a ready-made roster here. We're going to add some pieces. We've got the big three. And it all just kind of came crashing down quickly. And all of a sudden Drummond's gone and Jackson's gone and Griffin's gone. Everybody's gone now. And, but I think he's okay with it. I really do. I think he's enjoying this, maybe this team kind of keeps him young. They're a bunch of young guys. I think the fact that we're starting to finally see, 50, 60 games into the season, starting to see some maturity, starting to see some learning how to win kind of things. And you mentioned Cunningham, and if they get one more, I'll tell you this, the fan base is out of their minds with excitement about this team. Yeah. When you talk about, the Red Wings who are getting thumped tonight by a terrible Arizona team, you talk about the teams in town and who's the closest to getting out of the darkness. Well, I think we all agree that it's the Tigers, but the Pistons, who at the beginning or the first part of the year you would say, oh no, their Red Wings are way ahead of on the curve than the Pistons are. Well, now I think that script is flipped. I think there's a lot of excitement right now about the Pistons, a lot of it, and I don't think there's as much excitement about the Red Wings now. The last couple of weeks, and I know they've played a lot of good teams, but they're playing Arizona tonight. And they're getting thumped. Yeah,
their goaltending has gone south over the past few weeks for whatever reason.
So which makes you give pause to what Yzerman's built. This is not an anti-Yzerman thing, but maybe he's hit. There's been a little speed bump here on the road to happiness. Whereas the Pistons now, if you go on Twitter, the fans are really lit up about this team. They're really excited about it. They're like, hey, we had one more, because they always talk in terms of first person. We had one more player from the top 5 this year in the draft. We've got a lot of cap space when the Blake Griffin contract goes off the books.
Yep.
All of a sudden, fans are thinking maybe next year is the year that the Pistons make that leap to playoff contenders as opposed to the 2 years from now, which is what I think a lot of people thought. They're kind of thinking that, well, if things fall into place, we get a top 5 lottery pick, we make some smart signings, maybe 23-24 could be a playoff year.
Yep. Yeah, so, I remember people saying, well, no, who's going to be the next big face of Detroit sports? Would it be, they talk about Casey Mize, or could it be Riley Green, or Spencer Torkelson, or, one of the Mo Sider, Lucas Raymond, something like that. It's looking more and more it's going to be Cade Cunningham. Just because it looks like he might be, it's going to be him or Sider going to be the best players of all the young guys. Well, obviously we haven't seen, I think, Riley Green. I think has the Tiger with the most upside. But Cade Cunningham and Mo Sider look like they have not just all-star upside, but no, it's early yet. But these are a couple guys who have all-pro, like all NBA, like in Cade's case, all NBA, in Sider's case, Norris Trophy level talents. These are guys who could get MVP type votes and things like that. And I don't think the other two teams have. I don't think the Tigers have that yet. At least we don't know for sure. And obviously the Lions don't. So Cade Cunningham is starting to show. He's just so solid, I guess the best way to put it. And he's still learning. He's still inefficient. His shooting percentage isn't where you want it to be yet. But in crunch time, he wants the ball. He'll take the big shot. More often than not, as of late, he's making those shots. And it's a lot of fun to watch a young player like we're seeing like with Raymond and Sider and Cunningham, or Sadiq Bey for that matter, who's really stepped up his game in the second half of the season. Yeah, see young players grasp the moment and figure it out, and it's really fun to watch, and I hope it continues. But Cunningham's just been a revelation over the past month or so, and I hope hopefully it continues because he's playing like the number one pick in the draft, and that's what the Pistons desperately needed. All right, Greg, let's wrap this puppy up. Who's your jerk of the week?
I'm the jerk of the week is the jerk of the day, which is the Red Wings.
Yeah.
I was going to go in a little different direction. I was going to talk about Jimmy Harbaugh.
Oh, you sure you haven't changed your mind? The Red Wings just scored. They're only down 4 now.
This notion of losing 6-1 on home ice to the Coyotes.
Yeah, Arizona, they are a bad team. That's a horrible organization.
One of the worst teams in the one of the worst organizations in the league.
They're going to be playing like an arena that's going to hold 5,000 people next year.
Yeah, I don't know if, and they still won't sell it out probably. The thing is that they just. It's disappointing to me. I just last week. Yeah. I wrote a column about how it doesn't look like anybody's going to get fired, and the coaches are all kind of safe. And I see, Jeff Blashill is, there's been some development. You got Mo Sider, you got Lucas Raymond, and you got other young players that seem to be taking a step forward. Ever since I wrote that, they went down to Florida, and I get it. Florida's got 2 good teams down there, no question. They're not. I can see not being competitive. Well, I shouldn't say I can see it, but I understand a little more. Getting thumped by those 2 teams. Those are really good teams. Both those teams could go to the Stanley Cup final. But to come home and lay an egg against and you mentioned the goaltending, and I haven't seen the goals because we're doing the show.
Right.
But all I know is when you're giving up 6 goals to a team like that in the first few minutes of the second period, some of it's got to be goaltending. Some of it has to be. So, again, I'm sure Steve Yzerman will show there'll be no reflexive moves here. Nothing, he'll take his time like he always does. He's not going to fire Jeff Blashill tomorrow because they lost to the Coyotes. They're not. I get it, but to put on that, I guess they're being booed. From what I've seen on Twitter, it's not just the goaltending; it's the overall lack of effort, the performance. It's everything. It's not just the goalies and. I'm usually not that impulsive where I give a jerk of the week to a team because they had one bad night, but this is egregious, and I know they're not going to the playoffs.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter, Al, if they lose this game or if they win it. But it's the effort level and the complete collapse against the team in your own building is just it's painful to watch because And the reason why I'm making such a big deal about this game, and which I probably shouldn't be because it's just a regular season game against the Coyotes, but the reason why I'm making such a big fuss about this is because the Red Wings had been kind of leading us to believe that there was something happening that was good. Yeah. Okay, there was, with Sider, with Raymond, and with some of the they got Vrana back today, for example. Right. We all kind of thought, this is a team. I mentioned the Pistons comparison. This is the team after the Tigers. This is the next good team in Detroit.
Yeah.
And it really, again, I hate to make so much out of one single game, but this has been coming now for a little while. They got thumped in Florida. They get thumped tonight. They got thumped by Toronto. I think they were down 7-2. That was a wild game. It was 10-7. Mm-hmm. They were down 7-2. Again, they came back. Okay, I'll give you that. But these 6-1, 7-2, 6-1 things. I mean, that's disturbing to say the least. So I don't care who you're playing. So my jerk of the week is the Red Wings.
Yeah. Yeah, the wheels have fallen off over the past month or so for the Red Wings. And I just checked the stats, and they changed goalies again in this game. Seems like every other game, they have to make a goalie switch mid game. So I can understand your frustration why you need to call them out. So I'm with you there. All right, I'm going in a little different direction with my jerk of the week, because usually I'm railing about some sort of injustice I see in sports, but I'm going through personal experience with this one, because my jerk of the week is going to be Sinclair, the owner of Bally Sports Detroit. One, Sinclair, of course, is just a horrible organization, uber conservative, Trump supporting type corporation who owns numerous small TV stations around the country, including several in Michigan. And they bought the Fox Sports regional networks a couple years ago, right before the pandemic hit. And they leveraged themselves to the hilt to the tune of $9 billion or something ridiculous like that. And like almost immediately, the worth of those sports networks were cut in half over what's happened over the past 2.5 years or so because of streaming and cable cutting and the pandemic. Well, I'm a cable cutter. Over the past month, I have joined the multitudes who have cut the cable. I got fed up with Charter. My bill went up again. Or pardon me, Spectrum now. They don't want to be called Charter because Charter's a bad name. So I cut the cord. I've gone all wireless. I'm using a hotspot for my internet and running my internet completely wirelessly for the most part. And so my TV choices have changed to where if I want to have a cable style television, I need to go with a live TV streaming provider, such as YouTube TV, Fubo TV, DirecTV Stream, Sling TV, things like that. And I've tried almost all of them. Right now I'm on YouTube TV. And the one thing that's all in common is that only one of them, the most expensive one, DirecTV's service, none of them have the regional sports networks. None of them. I'm like DirecTV. I'm using YouTube TV. I'm on a 2-week trial with them right now. If I want to watch sport, if I want to watch the Pistons or Red Wings games, well, I could watch the Red Wings games because I had to subscribe to ESPN Plus because they have hockey now, so I can watch some of the Red Wings games if they're broadcast on ESPN Plus, but not all of them. But the Pistons, if I don't have Bally Sports Detroit, I'm out of luck unless I start jumping through hoops, like installing a VPN and spoofing where my location is, and then subscribing to NBA League Pass. It's a bunch of hoops to jump through when I just want to watch my local team. But it's become so ridiculous price-wise that the streaming providers know that the regional sports networks are really a niche. They don't drive viewership as much as the price that they ask for calls for. So they've all dropped them. So if I want to watch like the Pistons game yesterday, I had to pirate it. I had to go online, go to those questionable places where they have several illegal streams where I could watch the game, and then have to stream it to my big TV that way. Which I had to jumping through hoops just to watch a local team, which sucks. So I wish they could just figure this out. Now, all four major pro sports need to get their streaming and their local streaming options figured out. Cable is dying. People do not want to pay cable prices. And Sinclair is desperately holding on by the skin of their teeth, trying to keep that alive, and are charging outrageous prices to do it. So it leaves cord cutters off on an island, unable to watch teams they root for. It's an absolute cluster. And when baseball season does finally roll around, that's going to be more hoops for me to try and jump through, because I'm going to have to probably have MLB TV and then pay for a VPN and then jump. Oh, I don't even want to go into the headaches it's going to cost me. So my jerk of the week, Greg, is Sinclair. They're an evil corporation who needs to fix their streaming services to where it can be done locally. So, I'm willing to pay money to them so I can watch the Wings and Pistons and Tigers. Make it happen. So they're my jerk of the week. It's awful. It's awful.
Oh.
Yeah, and you were telling me before we started recording, I'm thinking of cutting the cord. Then you're hearing all my, it's great except for local sports. You're screwed when it comes to local sports. So, all right, with that, let's get the hell out of here because I'm sure Greg's got a cold cocktail waiting for him right now. So, Greg, if you get out the thank yous and where they can find us on social media and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. Follow me on my on Twitter at Greg. I'll check out my WordPress Out of Bounds blog every week. I would appreciate that. You can also follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. And want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this stuff every 2 weeks. And thank you, Big Al, for making Tuesday night so gosh darn fun.
Yes, and I want to give a shout out to Linda, who's actually off. She just got done working 4 straight days in a row. Apparently the hospitals are full again, but it's not because of COVID. It's because they've had to close down wings because they are short-staffed. So, no, that's because they burned out all the nurses during COVID. So, right. Oh my God, I hate hearing everything those nurses are going through. I mean, they are still dealing with the effects of stuff that happened 2.5 years ago, unfortunately. But shout out to her. Shout out to you, Greg, for making the time out of your busy schedule to talk sports with me, who doesn't have a life. And a shout out to the listeners who hope you keep listening and look to find us at the usual streaming places. So I'll get those out of the way. If you want to listen to the show, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public, thekneejerks.net. That would be the homepage where you can get all the show links and show notes. You can also directly download the MP3 from there to do what you will with. Essentially, though, any places podcasts are aggregated, just search for the Knee Jerks or search for Eno and Big Al. The next podcast will be 2 weeks from now. So until that time, Greg, anything you need to add before we close this puppy out?
Nope, not at all.
Yeah, Greg's thirsty. So, until that time, 2 weeks from now, we'll... hopefully we'll have baseball to talk about. Hopefully we'll have spring training at least to talk about, Greg. And maybe we'll, who knows when it comes to anything else at this point. We'll probably have football free agency. That'll be the other big topic, I'm sure. So until that time, where we get to yell about the Lions again in 2 weeks, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.